Hello, my name is Anthony Ramos, and today we're going to be talking about the software exposure assessment and vulnerability response. Some of the things I want to go over today are the intro to software exposure, the role of software asset management when it comes to vulnerability response, ServiceNow VR and SAM, how they work together, give you kind of an example, and I'll be going through that as the example throughout the slides. And mitigating vulnerabilities with SAM and SAM's role in identifying critical vulnerabilities. So, software exposure. Let's go over the scenario of a zero-day attack or a zero-day vulnerability where you see that a software in your environment, or you get a report that the software in your environment has a critical issue that needs to be addressed. Well, you automatically know that the security teams are going to be reacting to that as quickly as possible. But the issue is you have a large environment, and scanning for that vulnerability in your environment can take days, weeks, depending upon your environment. So this is where we want to incorporate kind of what we know today versus having to go out and rescan. So the role of software asset management is to track software assets within the organization environment. So what we want to do is incorporate that SAM data with NVD data to help us identify kind of what we have and what state it's in. So we know that there's a vulnerability with whatever software you have, or whatever version of that software it is. And you can go into SAM and look at the last scan and figure out, okay, for this particular piece of software on this version, how many assets do I have with that version on it? So what this is going to do is you can create vulnerable items to track that risk, and then come up with a remediation plan to be able to address those as quickly as possible while not having to wait for the scan. You can do this in parallel. So this is going, when you're working through this particular scenario, and vendors are going to come out with a solution as quickly as possible, right? So we can go back and say, okay, for those X amount of assets that we know that have this vulnerability on it, we can then create changes, a change plan for that piece of software so that we can get it updated as quickly as possible. And we can do that with the help of SAM, right? So we're mitigating vulnerabilities with SAM because we know what's in our environment today. So SAM is going to give us that real-time data of what we have, give us the exposure models so that we can understand and we can communicate, okay, this is what we have in the environment. Here's how deep the impact is. And we know that, say, this section or these assets are vulnerable, and we can decide what to do with them quickly versus having to wait or scramble to figure out how deep that vulnerability is. So, in summary, organizations, it gets to be a bit of a mess when it comes to who owns what is impacted, and how do we address it. Utilizing SAM with VR is going to give you faster resolution for those zero-day type attacks or vulnerabilities that come in. We identify the assets that are exposed to that vulnerability and helps us mitigate that issue, along with tracking communication. And we understand that there are going to be parties that want to know what's the status, and this allows us to be able to run reports and say, okay, this is the impact. Here are how many assets that are affected by this, and here is the plan to address those. Here are the change numbers. Here is the version. Here's the testing. All of that we can do with that partnership that we have with SAM. More information can be found on our docs page, and please reach out on the community if you have any questions. Thank you for your time.